Indeed, we are late in gay chat. I was thinking about being early, and then the first person said Don's late, and we hadn't even reached time yet, so I figured I'd just actually be late. With that said, let's get past all of the nonsense. I have here with me Lucius Coal, who indeed runs some other YouTube channel under the name of Lucius Coal. And before we do any of this, you can find quite literally all of the social media in the description up at the top. I think it is the first person I have seen that has roughly as much as I do. So congratulations on that.
Yeah, it's definitely been tech censorship is absolutely out of control right now. So basically, it's like creating lifeboats. Given everything that's going on YouTube, it has been it's been a long fight.
You're not even wrong. That is how I ended up on everything under the sun. I think, by the way, you were the first person to send me more than one social media that I needed to tag you in. So
it's all about consistency and just making sure that the word is spread and that fellow patriots actually come together in order to spread a message of liberty.
You're not wrong. It's becoming the short list of people even saying so. No, that is not Baked Alaska. Let's just cover that right now. So it's become the short list of people saying anything even vaguely along those lines. And I get why, I hear a lot of people talk about, liberty caucuses of the past and how all they really did was nothing. And they're not wrong, but at the same time, I don't think the progressivism but for me thing is the route that we really ought to be going down.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the Jeffersonian message of spreading the seeds of liberty and only needing a very small percentage of the population in order to cause change in the world has been an absolute dramatic shift. Ron Paul, in my opinion, was one of those arbiters of truth that actually pushed people more to the right, seeing that liberty is actually very popular, especially among young people. I think progressivism in terms of the long term is actually going to hurt the country. And we were talking about this earlier, but there are a lot of things from both sides of the aisle that I think we can agree on. And given the amount of censorship and utter tyranny that we are living under with the current lockdown paradigm in the United States of America, it's absolutely critical that people speak out now, because if you don't, you will not have a voice in the future. And this continues on and on. We've already seen that YouTube, in terms of their own censorship, has been pushing propaganda and allowing what's called mainstream news or legacy media, which I like to call it, get pushed out there as if it is the truth, when despite all the evidence, we know it is contrary to that. I think it's absolutely critical that patriots stand up now and speak. There was actually some information that was actually passed out today by YouTube entertaining the idea that if your videos are being pushed from outer sources, meaning Reddit, meaning Parler, meaning Gab, meaning Twitter, meaning other sites, maybe even your own website itself, and it happens to push to YouTube, they are going to continue to throttle that because they do not consider it organic traffic. So not only are they going to push people to mainstream sources, but then they are going to punish you in the only way you are able to actually get your message out there.
So I have heard this a lot, and I have not seen the documentation from YouTube. And not seeing documentation from YouTube always makes me nervous of whatever it actually says. Usually not because I suddenly have faith in YouTube, but because other people seem to have more faith in YouTube than me. And so what is the plan, right? Because if I just link to the YouTube video, what are they going to do? Just disable the URL?
Right. Well, I guess the way in terms of the algorithm works, and I'm sure you've experienced on a multitude of issues, you'll post a video out there, and for some reason, this one gets thousands of views, and the next one only gets a few hundred views. The way that I've experienced it in terms of the algorithm, because I've had other channels as well, working with self-improvement and stuff like that, if you happen to delve into certain topics, especially political commentary, good luck. It is fighting an uphill battle. See, for example, that if you were to try to tell somebody to lift up 10 pounds and then they were to turn to you and say, hey, can you lift 100? And you had to do that over and over and over again. After the while, you're going to get pretty tired of working within these parameters. And what's really frustrating to me is seeing what Donald Trump is doing. And to be honest, I don't know if the executive order that was pushed out there in terms of him stating specifically that these platforms, quote unquote, were able to actually act in politically overt manners. I don't know if you have seen this, but Donald Trump has had his last 2 videos that was posted on his YouTube channel removed.
Yeah. Well, I mean, welcome to the game, right? I don't know how else to say that. Everybody and their brother, and I see this I've been around YouTube for a long time, and I see this sort of thing over and over and over again. They can't do insert a thing. To which my only answer is, well, now that you've said it out loud, you can expect it within the next 24 months. They can't do it, Don. You have no idea what you're talking like. They can't limit the ads, man. It won't work, man. How would they make money, man? And then 2 weeks later, the adpocalypse happens. Well, okay. How did that go for you? Well, they can't censor the president's tweets, man. Well, they just did. Now what? Well, they can't like They can't turn down his YouTube videos, man. They can't get rid of them. It's YouTube. They can get rid of anybody's YouTube videos. Get ready, because it's coming.
It's all arbitrary, and the funny thing is, this is not just affecting people from the right and the liberty movement, conservatives, Republicans, whatever you define yourself as. It's affecting people on the left too. If you are a political dissident, whether you are from the left or the right, you are going to experience some form of censorship. If you are not MSNBC, CBS, Fox News, CNN, if you are not one of the major players, or you haven't been added into an allocated whitelist, you are looking at censorship at massive forms, which is why I recommend you go and look for Plebeian Media on places like BitChute and Odyssey and stuff like that. You have to be going out there and using these sites, because what advertisers are looking at is they're looking for users. And if you have the exact same video on another site, whether it be BitChute or Odyssey, Rumble, I know you just created a Rumble account, go out there, follow Plebeian Media, and actually watch those videos on those platforms, because the advertisers are going to see that there is user engagement, and they are going to be willing to put their hard-earned dollars into that particular platform.
It's a reality, right? So, I mean, there's... I know somebody has a good enough eye to do this, because I did. Rumble posts what you make off a video, and so there's some stuff over there where, well, this has 40,000 views, and the creator made $16, and I get that that does not sound exciting, and I understand why people are. And I have seen a few people do it. Like, well, how much does that really matter? Well, here's how this works. There are a giant supply of advertisers who will be competing against each other based on price. So the more of them there are, the more they'll pay for ad space. But,
yeah,
if what we do is just go, oh, well, it doesn't really matter, I'll just stick to YouTube, and make no mistake, everyone who posts on YouTube has this problem, where you create an account on some other site and 5% of your audience goes. Then we're all stuck with YouTube, whether anybody likes it or not.
Right. And I've seen this a lot. I don't know if you're familiar with the creator known as Salty Cracker. He now stops his streams midstream and switches to DLive in the middle of the stream, so that he's able to get more traffic over to his other channels. It's very unfortunate, but YouTube, despite all of their flaws, has an amazing user interface. The way that you're able to comment, the way that it is streamlined. If you look at websites like BitChute, and I'm not here to try to thrash them, but the search function is basically nil. They're working on their live streaming service, and everything just seems it's very hard to navigate. I would say Odyssey, in terms of their own UI and user interface, is incredible. But at the end of the day, if you're somebody who does political discourse, and you're somebody who does commentary on cultural events or political events, etc., you are looking at a day's worth of content when you post something. If you aren't posting something that's evergreen, that is going to stand the test of time, maybe you do a book review, maybe you go out there and talk about a particular subject in terms of science that's going to hold its knowledge and hold its power over a long stream of time. Political people are being attacked on 2 fronts, not only in terms of the censorship, but the content that we are creating in order to get out a message of liberty is actively pushed as a one-day deal. So good luck.
It's not just that, though, right? There's lots of stuff that we talk about that will stand for a week or two. even for a month or two. Some things that will stand for years without too much of a problem. And a little while ago, I did a live stream called Let's Talk About the Left. The left hasn't changed much in a millennia, and the things that I talk about there are not going to be irrelevant as long as there is generally a left. And so the way that this worked is that I have long ago noticed that YouTube is very aware of what recommendations are and how to abuse them horribly so that it still looks like you're getting recommended, but you're worse than not getting recommended, right?
Yeah.
Because if I get recommended to nobody, then this channel will grow organically based on people advertising it, and that's it, right? And that's basically how it actually grows. Every now and again, I find somebody who's like, yeah, man, I got recommended your channel. I'm like, really? You're like the fifth one. And so, it does happen where someone who might actually pay attention gets recommended. But if you go over to... Why aren't I live on DLive right now? That's a good question. I have no idea why I'm not live on DLive right now. DLive has been doing this to me lately, so I don't know. Sorry, chat. I will have to try and figure that out again at some point, because I should be. That said, what they end up doing is recommending people that hate you, right? And being as we know they have these giant user profiles about people, it's not like they don't know they're doing it. If
Right.
you only recommend radical communist to this channel, all I'm going to do is get hate viewers, which is fine. Come down and hate view. I'll delete you out of chat, but come on down and hate view. I don't mind.
Yeah.
But you don't end up with the people who would actually watch the channel. And the evidence I have for that is that there are a few people who go out of their way to advertise this channel, and more than a little. And every single time they get the same thing. How did I not know this channel existed? I've been looking for channels like this for a long time. What the hell is going on? And
Yep.
it's just the same thing forever.
Yeah, it really, if you look at the tags in terms of the algorithm, it seems as if the more, unfortunately, if you're someone who's coming from, whether you're from the populist left or the populist right, it seems to be that the less tags that you have, the more obscure you make your channel. So YouTube can't pinpoint what you are. They can't label you. They can't frame you in a particular way. It makes it very difficult for the algorithm to pull you out. A lot of channels that I happen to get pushed from the right, I happen to look through their tags. What are they posting their videos with? And they are very, very simple. It's like libertarian, conservative, freedom, USA, nothing where you could actually search that term. And for some reason, the algorithm happens to pick that up. But despite all of this, Donald Trump had 2 years to do something about Section 230. What is going on in terms of our ability to speak truth to power is insanity to me. We are talking about multi-billionaires telling you that you are not allowed to have an opinion, that you are not allowed to question the lockdowns. You are not allowed to question the science. You are not allowed to question whether or not your freedom is being taken away from you. This is absolute insanity at the nth degree. And the amount of sheeple and the people that are going out there being the nice little Soviet puppets that they are is an absolute disgrace to everybody who has a virtue of freedom in their soul. I cannot believe what is going on in this country right now. I am totally perplexed that Donald Trump had the House and the Senate for 2 years. He had 2 years. He knew what was going to happen in 2018. He saw what happened in 2016 in terms of the way that they went after him, basically like dogs. They were attacking him constantly. And yet for some reason, nothing was pushed to actually address this. And now it is all for naught.
Well, welcome to a pretty standardized problem of politics, which is to say, the left is never worried about using power, and the right effectively refuses to do so, for no reason that makes a whole lot of sense, in short. But realistically, what it comes down to is the right is a pretty vastly disparate group of people. because it's all just whenever people got off the left. And so what you end up with is the huge differentiation of view of what year people got off the left-wing train. Effectively, they don't generally like to roll their views back and go, oh, maybe I was wrong about other things. And so when you try to get the right together to get them to do anything, they come at you from 4,000 different viewpoints and then say, well, unless we can all agree, then we're not doing it. Right?
Yeah, I mean, a big proponent of all of this has been just simply people not willing to stand up and fight. And I see you talking about this all the time. I mean, the censorship, people going out there and protesting. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to see change in the world, you have to be the change in the world. You have to be the ones. This is individual liberty. This is your life. This is your children. This is your grandchildren. And this is the thing. I hear a lot of people with the rah-rah and the speeches and this, that, and the other. Oh, we're going to go fight a civil war. And yet you can't go to a congressional building and sit there like Gandhi. And when the police tell you to go, to leave, to get out of the area, you just get up and move. And where is the fight? You're talking about fighting in a war. You can't even sit your ass on the ground and tell the police officer to shove it.
And this is, I get why people get blackpilled over this. I really, really do. Because, when I was watching the Oregon nonsense the other day over on DLive, and around the time the cops walked over and were like, oh, we just want to resolve this peacefully, man, so you guys just get out of the road and let's just go back to doing whatever. And then they all went, yeah, that's okay, right? We're going to do that. Well, I have a hard time believing that when you're sitting in a less than comfortable space, and if you think you're going to check into the Civil War at 6 p.m. after your job and you're going to stand your 4-hour shift, that's not how it's going to go, right? You're not going to have a house. You're going to be sleeping in the back of trucks, sleeping in on a piece of concrete somewhere. And if you can't deal with the discomfort of going, if you want me gone, you're at bare minimum going to start pepper spraying us out of here. Then I don't think you're going to be able to put up with the long-term discomfort of, I don't know, war. Yeah,
Say what you want about the left, but they can mobilize. They are willing to fight back. Heck, they are willing to burn entire buildings down. That's the level of anarchy and the level of fight that they have in them. And yet we can't even go out there and tell the police to shove it. And this is the problem with a lot of people on the right, and including myself. My stepfather, he's a cop. And a lot of people, they see somebody in terms of authority. They say, hey, you know what? This guy's a good guy. Maybe I know him personally, etc. What I want you to think about is, in terms of police officers, maybe you know them. Have you ever actually seen them on the job? For example, have you ever actually seen your friend at work? Have you ever actually maybe seen your friend in the bedroom? People have different ways of dealing with things. They said, you know what, my friend would never do this, and my friend would never do that. And this is a big red pill for me. If you were to tell me a year ago that police officers were going to go into restaurants and simply arrest the owners for opening up their business, I would have said you were crazy.
In a sting operation, no less.
Insanity. New York City is an absolute dump. I will never go there again. Furthermore, we're talking about, this is so frustrating to me. I hear people on the right also saying if the military was ever called, there was no way they would ever turn on American citizens. Do you see what the cops are doing? You think in good faith that, you know what, maybe there might be 50% the dissent, but the other 50% is all that is needed to absolutely obliterate anybody.
This is the thing, right, is that there's a big assumption that goes into that statement. And I think if that assumption is true, then the statement is true. If you went to the United States military and you said, all right, guys, what we're going to do is purge civilians with political points of view that we don't like, I think the military would tell you to pound sand, right? Like, look, we're not doing that, right? And would there still be some who were like, yeah, okay, cool, let's do it? Sure. But it would be huge numbers of the military who would be like, that's not a thing. How about no? But that's not how this order is going to come down, right? Make no mistake. It is not going to be, well, these guys have very pro-American points of view, and so what we need to do is kill them for the great, for the sake of the global reset, so we can build back better. This speech is not coming. What will be coming is, look, there's a terrorist element in this locale, and they are striking back against not only the government, but the civilians in the local area. And the local police department can't help with it, can't handle it. The feds have been called in, and that's not going very well. So we have been asked to come in and supplement or take over. And that's how that order will come down. This idea that it will be some really straightforward thing, just get that out of your head, because they're going to tell those guys what they need to tell them to get them to do stuff.
And it doesn't, with all the powers that have been passed down to the president, basically able to execute United States citizens, simply get rid of any form of justice and any form of trial. They can simply kill people on the whim now. And when you remove somebody from actually armed combat and actually being boots on ground, who says they even need to have soldiers? Have you seen our drones? It is utter insanity. Look at the Chelsea Manning tapes. Look at all those kids. Look at all those kids that got shot up. And these people were talking about the people that they were shooting at like they were fish in a barrel. They had dehumanized them to a point that they didn't even care. And you think somebody from, and I'm just throwing states out here, somebody who's in the military from California or New York, for example, or Oregon, you think they're going to care whatsoever if they have to shoot a couple people down in Alabama through a drone? No.
Well, this is a different thing, right? Because if there is a single person that can be taken out and that will be the end of whatever movement you're talking about, that person's getting droned. And they're getting droned in 5 minutes flat. Because that's what those things are about, right? The Manning tapes are about a pretty major leader in, I believe, Al-Qaeda that was having a wedding, and so they went after them. Now, this is the thing, and why I worry about everybody who's like, oh, we'll just get behind Don. I'm like, well, if you just get behind Don, here's what's going to happen. Either SEAL Team 6 is kicking in my front door and putting a bullet in my forehead, or they're going to drone wherever I'm at. So you had better be willing to pick up and carry on if I'm dead. And by the way, that takes out, that completely ignores all of the realities of warfare, right? Where suddenly we've all moved into the poog, and this is all a realistic discussion as opposed to trying to get political solutions done. But let's say that we're there. It doesn't matter who you're getting behind. That person is getting either a hell of a door knock at 2 a.m. or droned. That's it. And if you can't pick up and carry on from then, well, then you've already lost.
Yeah, it really is. And again, I'm sick of the rhetoric. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, at the end of the day, and I say this every time, just look in your locale in terms of what you can have in terms of political power. I don't care if you're doing mosquito control. I don't care if you're doing parks and recreation. Simply any single spot where you're able to exercise your will and make the life better for you, your family, and your country, you should do that. You saw what happened this last election cycle. A trans Satanist won the Republican primary in New York City. Let me repeat that. A trans Satanist won the Republican primary in New York City. Additionally, I believe it was 2 years ago in North Carolina, a man by the name, I believe, Jacob Green. I know his last name is Green. He won his election. He won his election in North Carolina. He was living out of his parents' basement. He simply found a way to get on the ballot. And that's all it takes, ladies and gentlemen. You can be the change. We no longer have to look at people in terms of idols. You can be the idol. You can be the one pushing liberty. You can be the one who is a true conservative, actually fighting the good fight, rather than looking to false idols to try to push out what you believe is a true and just America.
Make no mistake, right? Herein is consistently the problem. Because I know people currently who want to primary people that are crap or run against people that are crap wherever it is that they are. Right. And I know at this point quite a few people who, assuming that we don't kick off into the wild civil war on January 20th, as Chad has already suggested, will be doing that in 2022. Right, and 2024 and what have you. It depends on when that person is up for election next, mostly. And Every single one of them has expressed the exact same problem. One, I don't really want to do this. I had some other plan for my life. Two, I feel like I have to. But three, the political machine is going to come for me and it's going to try and eat me. And they're correct on all three of those points, I'm sure. Their personal preferences, I don't really know. But it seems foolish to say both the first two if they're not true. But the third point is the thing to worry about because, and this is another thing, in the world of voting, you had better get used to voting for people who are not perfect, right? This guy got a speeding ticket in 1971. Who cares? Well, this guy's ex-girlfriend said he was a piece of crap. And? Next? Go talk to my ex-girlfriends. I promise you, they will tell you that I'm the worst person on earth. But this is what American politics looks like. Oh, well, this guy's ex-girlfriend said that he beat her, or the Roy Moore thing always drives me nuts. I don't care what you actually think of the Roy Moore situation, but the reality of this is someone had a signed yearbook, and we used that as evidence of kid touching. And I was like, so congratulations, you've just lowered the bar to no one had better sign a yearbook ever again. Oh, and by the way, if you've already signed a yearbook, you're screwed. Because that is evidence of kid touching. So, thanks. We're all totally screwed now.
Yeah, it's people just have to be willing to take their licks. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, if you just look at the news cycle, if you have to go back, think about what happened 3 weeks ago. You probably have no idea. You have no clue. The news cycle is so fast, ladies and gentlemen. Even if you get dug and dragged through the mud, it is so temporary. And if you're somebody who has actually been doxxed before or somebody who has been attacked online by a massive amount of people, your natural instincts, your evolutionary instincts is to literally feel like you're going to die. Because if you were back in the caveman days, if that many people were saying you are this, you are that, this person does this person does that, you die. Yeah. This is a completely new age. We are living in a technological age. You have to be willing to turn off that caveman mindset that you're currently rocking and say, hey, you know what? Oh my God, Fox News came after me. CNN came after me, some low Huffington Post or whoever. If you're able to actually get on there and take a look at the Wolf of Wall Street, ladies and gentlemen, 2016 is the greatest example of a man being slandered to the point of utter insanity and still beating the system. You are not going to reach the levels of Donald Trump criticism if you were to run for some small little part, and that's the thing too. I'm not asking for a big jump, ladies and gentlemen. I'm just asking you to get into your local city council. Maybe you can run for mayor. Maybe you can run for pest control. The best thing that you can do is be the change you wish to see in the world. And people always want to take that huge jump. Ladies and gentlemen, Donald Trump had to be a freaking billionaire, a multi-billionaire just to win. Just to win, he had to be a multi-billionaire. So that's the amount of power you have to wield in order to gain the highest office in the land. So I'm not saying lower your standards, but simply go out there and actually get into those positions of power and work your way up the ladder. If you're speaking truth to power, people will get behind you.
Well, sometimes anyway.
Yeah.
But
truth.
Chat rightly brings up the point that, look, as long as they're going to fraudulently steal elections, then, aren't we putting the cart before the horse with voting somebody in 2022 or whatever? And look, the reality of any discussion that we're having here, the presumption of it, is that somehow or another we make it past January 20th without the world coming to an end. You simply can't have the discussion of, are we going to run candidates in X year without this assumption? Is it for all of the people who've talked to me about running for office and what we could do to support them and how we could help make that happen? I'm sure every single one of them will tell you that I have gone radio silent on this point until we know what the hell is going on between now and, say, June, right?
Right.
Because, look, should there be some sort of future plan under the assumption that we actually make it through this? Yes. Is it the front-running idea right now? No. So for those of you who are rightly pointing out, like, well, Don, you're the guy who says you don't have any plans after the 6th. I don't. But if the world doesn't come to an end, if we figure out how to get past where we are, then those plans need to exist. And insofar as I've been working on them a lot longer than since the election, they do exist.
Yeah, I think it really is the time. It's funny. It's funny that you say that, because most leaders, or at least good leaders, tend to turn away from power, which would probably make you a great example of why you should run, because you understand that government is inherently corrupt, that the system is inherently corrupt, that the system isn't, everything about it, its tentacles reaching into big tech, the big banks, the multimedia, the global entity. I mean, if you want to get into big stuff like global governance and stuff like that, it's one big game. I mean, George Carlin said it best. It's one big party, and you're not in it.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Do you want to be the party that's over there with all the little, I can't say that, YouTube. Sorry. Do you want to be over there, like saying, oh my God, just living that NPC robot lifestyle? Or do you want to go to the bar down the street? That's the real party. And we can create that. We can be that change. We can actually go out there. And in terms of actually making this happen, again, guys, this is why I say on a small scale, people are saying it's not going to matter because of the voting. Ladies and gentlemen, if you look at some of the states like Iowa, for example, or you look at Florida, they were able to count everything very, very quickly. It's really weird that when all of a sudden you remove all of those political people in terms of the elections in Florida, and Governor Ron DeSantis removed them, all of a sudden Florida just has a squeaky clean election. I don't know why that is. It just must happen to be happenstance. I don't know. It's almost as if when you put people in key positions in terms of the electoral process, things run smoothly. And that's the thing, guys. Democrats, and this is the thing, I really don't like to say Democrat and Republican, because at the end of the day, I believe all of us know in our heart of hearts that this is a true uniparty. It really is just a political game at a massive level. And people who come to understand that it's not just Democrats and it's not just Republicans will be able to better assert themselves in terms of the political atmosphere that is needed to actually garner power in the United States.
Well, this is welcome to the continuous political reality. There are a very large quantity of Americans that just vote party on ballot, right?
Yep. Right.
And I know somebody, John, you haven't seen the statistics. It's only 40% of America between the two parties that does that. Okay. See, you could totally win as long as you convinced literally everybody else. Okay, that's a totally reasonable option, except that it's not. And so it is worth noting that there is one party where you can get dissent from, call it whatever you want, the uniparty, the machine, the what have you. Because I guess that's not fair. You can get dissent on the left, but dissent looks like AOC, right? That's what dissent on.
She's a puppet though too. She's a puppet though too. I mean, sorry to cut you off, but on the left, it's funny. Rashida Tlaib. Rashida Tlaib was one of the only Democrats who actually fought against the stimulus bill. I don't care what her reasons are. Actions speak louder than words. She actually shot it down, while people like Josh Hawley and AOC do their nice little rah-rah speech with their nice little Instagram following, telling you that they're fighting for you, and then they vote for it. Well, actions speak louder than words.
So therein is the thing, right? Is AOC's... See, I sat and listened to people talk about this, and it's amazing how people can say out loud what other people have said and somehow not have listened to it, right? Because AOC's complaint was not that there was anything wrong with that bill. She just went, oh, I want more time to read it. And so, shock of shocks that she voted for it, right? Whoever the hell the other guy was, who I always confuse with somebody else, and so I don't want to malign them. The Republican that everyone was complaining about, who said, I think this is terrible, and then voted for it anyway. That guy has less of, was that Hawley? Okay.
Yeah, Hawley.
So, if you think it's terrible, then there's no excuse to be voting for it. But with AOC, that's not what she said, right? She said, well, I should have had more time to read it, which is not a complaint about the content of the bill, right? It's not that she went, well, look, I only, I read 250 pages of this, and in those 250 pages, I already found A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and H that I thought were wrong. It was, well, I should have got to sit on it longer, which is a function of bureaucrat, not of principle, right?
Yeah, and I mean, I don't understand this. This was a great comment I read the other day. Why is there not more people out there doing the filibuster? And all the time, all you're doing during the filibuster is say, hey, you know what, guys? Here's what we're going to do. We're going to read the bill from start to finish so you understand it. I don't care if it takes 48 hours, 60 hours, whatever. I'm going to sit here and tell you what you're actually voting on right now. It blows my mind that 3 to 6 hours before the vote comes down, the bill is presented. These are the people that are supposed to make the laws, and yet they don't even know what's in them. It is pure insanity at the highest degree.
Well, that's... Welcome to finding the incentives of politics, right? Versus what we would all like the incentives of politics to be. So the reality of this stimulus bill is that there are huge swaths of the American public who just said, give me money at any cost, and it doesn't matter how much. And as long as that remains true, that bill could have had $1 to every American man, woman, and child, and it would have been, well, you did ask for money, right?
Yeah.
And there is a lower level of that is going to be more insult than it is remedy, but once you're over $500, I think you're past that line. I know that lots of people were, Americans need more than $600. And what was the answer to that is, the squad kicked out an amendment immediately that said, okay, leave the entire rest of the bill alone, but change the number to 2,000.
Right. Right. And I mean, that was symbolic. They didn't actually have to put it to a floor vote. Nancy Pelosi could have just passed it willy-nilly, and she didn't, because it's all about optics, and that's what I don't understand in terms of this stimulus bill. A lot of people are talking about the redlining that Donald Trump had done. As far as I know, the redlining in terms of line-by-line item was actually struck down in 1996 by Hillary versus the state of New York.
So what you're talking about is byline veto, which is not what he did, right? Because this is the same problem I had this morning, right? Is that what Trump did is, in 74, we passed a bill that said, if you hand me a financial package, and that financial package, to get real short about this, doesn't make any sense, then what I can do is approve the bill, but cross out a bunch of stuff and send it back to you, or, underline a bunch of stuff and send it back to you and go, well, this is all stupid, so fix this. But other than that, the bill is passed. And so he's not actually vetoing anything, right?
No, there's no incentive for them to do the right thing. I mean, and why would they? They got exactly what they wanted. And you don't go to purchase a car, and then once you purchase the car, try to argue about the price. What you do is you argue the price, and then you purchase the car. The fact that he went pen to paper, I see a lot of people talking about 4D chess, this, that, and the other. And to be honest, this bill passing was a really big betrayal to me. I really hope there's a bigger plan, and I'm hoping some more information comes out on it. But if I'm being truth, and that's what I will always be, I was massively disappointed when he actually signed this bill.
So, based on what I can gather from this, either we're making a mistake here that we should have learned already, which is to say that Trump went, okay, well, I can send this back to them, and I can tell them that the bloat has got to go, and that's what they've got to address. And so if I sign it and send it back to them that way, they can't override my veto because I didn't veto it, which is true. However, that they have to address it does not mean they have to give him what he wants.
Right. And that's the thing too, is like, even if you were to use that argument, if it was from basically an optics point of view and you wanted to stop them from doing X, Y, and Z, at the end of the day, if they actually went over him and used the veto proof majority, it would look bad on them. It would hurt them. It only hurts him in terms of optics. And the funny thing is here is there was people from the left and the right that hated this bill. I mean, Twitter is basically an echo chamber of leftists. And even the tweets that were voting them all out, it's saying that this bill was a joke. They were fighting back with the right. The right and the left actually agreed on something, saying that this stimulus bill is an absolute joke. And I don't know, man. To be honest with you, what's going on right now is utter insanity. I mean, I don't mean to switch topics, but I don't know if you saw this earlier today. Apparently, daily in China, there is and I'm going to tread very, very lightly on this topic. By the way, there has been a new outbreak in terms of the VidCon, if you know what I'm talking about here, that we are all experiencing with the lockdowns. All of the VidCon going on in terms of China, there is a new strain. In Brazil, there is a new strain. In South Africa, there is a new strain. In the UK, there is a new strain.
So let me pause you for the sake of general channel code words. Cooties.
Cooties. Love it.
And this is... I hate cooties so freaking much because it's one of those things where I said at the beginning, stop doing this because it's a bad idea, and nobody listened. And this is, in the world of, oh my God, there's a new strain... of cooties, is there have been at least 5 strains of cooties from the beginning. And that was very publicized and talked about once upon a time. And then all of a sudden, it just sort of came into there's just cooties. And now we're talking about multiple strains. And to be fair, I have not looked into this. For all I know, there are now at least 6, right? And the presumption of the new lists of them include there being anywhere up to about 10. But for all I know, because no one is detailing this and comparing them to the older ones, for all I know, it's still the same 5 strains it's always been. And at some point, they moved across an ocean or across a border where some, strain A is prevalent in the United States and somebody from Europe brings strain B. Well, strain B's been around since last year, but it wasn't prevalent in the United States. So now there's a new strain. And with the way that they're handling travel in the UK, I would not be remotely surprised if that was the case. But herein lies the problem. Unless the new strain of cooties, I don't know, you get it and then your head pops off your shoulders, I still don't care,
I know. Cooties is insane. I mean, 99.98 from the statistics that I've read, rather. And I just think that these lockdowns are an absolute attack on humanity. And not just America. I mean, you see the way that people are dealing with the UK, and it just so happens, when you have people coming from China to America, it's xenophobia, but then the idea of blocking people from, I believe they were calling it like Merc Island or something like that, because it's just so infested with these cooties. I mean, it is utterly insane, the amount of hypocrisy that comes from both sides of the aisle on this. And it really is a tragedy what's happening. In terms of allowing the Emergency Powers Act to continue to be used as basically edicts from a lot of these governors. You look at players like Whitmer, you look at Wolf, you look at Cuomo, you look at Newsom. Basically, every single one of them have been kings and queens of their respective nations, if you will. Because if you're to go to places like Michigan, if you're to go places like Pennsylvania or California or New York, what you're going to see is that if you go to places like South Dakota or Florida, you are living in total different worlds.
Well, this is the thing about Whitmer in particular, right? Because Whitmer is in a very special situation insofar as everyone else still has their cases working through the courts. However, Whitmer has been to court over her lockdowns and been told these are unconstitutional, unlawful lockdowns, and you cannot do it. Now, that doesn't provide a lot of remedy because her answer to that was, well, I'll just do what I want anyway, right? And
Exactly.
don't get me wrong, this is coming for Cuomo as well, insofar as Cuomo got to court and the court said, hey, you can't do that. And he said, well, I already shut it down, so it doesn't really matter if you say that I can, which is the dumbest thing in the world. But, and why it was ruled rightly at the Supreme Court when it was ruled upon.
Right.
But regardless, this is the thing, is there is a term, a legal term, for confining people to a place, and that that confinement being against the law. It's generally known as unlawful confinement, and it is the baby kidnapping charge. So whatever the population of Michigan is how many times Whitmer should be charged with unlawful confinement. The court's already told her so, and no one will do it, right? And if you want lockdowns to stop, that's how it's going to happen.
That's a big problem. I mean, with the courts, I mean, like they're asking the executive branch of that particular state to police themselves. Good luck.
Yeah.
You're basically you're asking the oh geez, God, YouTube is insane. The way you have to speak is insanity to me. It blows my mind. I'm not able to actually speak what I'm talking about. I think that in terms of the lockdowns, Trump needs to do a lot more. In terms of everything being pushed out, in terms of Pfizer and Moderna, everything going on right now, in terms of the attacks on us, Trump has done a great job in terms of the wall, in terms of immigration, in terms of actually speaking for a lot of people that felt like they were lost for a very long time. There are a lot of things that he can improve on. When he removed people like Bannon, when he removed people like Flynn from positions of power and surrounded himself with the same deep state hacks that he said he would drain, it blows my mind. The ban on bump stocks, hiring people like Bolton and basically creating another Syria situation. I don't know what else to say. We need more pushback from the right. And this is why it blows my mind. I feel a lot of hate from the right. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, you have to put politicians' feet to the fire or they're not going to do anything for you. I don't care if they're on your side, quote unquote, or not. At the end of the day, politicians have to fear again. They have to fear the people. And they're only willing to actually go out there and do the things that you wish for them to do if you actually put pressure on them. It doesn't mean you hate them. It doesn't mean you dislike them. It simply means you want them to do what the people have asked that person to do. And it's just, if you look, for example, in terms of Congress, you look at what's going on with AOC. For those of you who don't know, the progressives are pushing stuff like trying to stop Nancy Pelosi from becoming House Speaker by forcing a vote on Medicare for all on the House floor. And people, the constituent out of New York, who happens to be with AOC, said that she would not vote for Pelosi. And you know what happened? She actually got the position in terms of head of a committee, where AOC said that she would vote for Pelosi and that she didn't get that spot. The point being that if you tell somebody, when you have leverage and you have actual power, you have to use that power to make politicians do the right thing, because the people that he has surrounded himself with do not have our best interests in mind.
Well, so nearly all of that goes right on back to you can't make an honest rule that dishonest people will follow. And you can't, right? That it's not a thing. It's why, we all argue against gun control because it's an honest rule that dishonest people won't follow. I mean, to be fair, it's kind of a dishonest rule, but dishonest people still don't follow it.
Right.
And so, yes, I still stream on DLive. I have no idea why DLive's not live right now. So, but this is the thing, is that we all want this giant crusade to happen, right? Where we, in this case, right, the current embodiment of that crusade is we take Donald Trump, we put him on a big white horse, we give him a bastard sword and a cool helmet, and he charges out into the fray that is politics, and he slays the dragon. And that's not how it works, right? I mean, that's very, fictional good times to read about, sure, but it's not actually how politics works. And being as it's mostly the group of people who want to be left alone who want that to happen, which is why they want that to happen, because they want to be left alone, there is a reality that wrangling them is difficult to say, look, you can't just vote Trump into office. The next thing that needs to happen is, Pelosi says something retarded, so we all go out to San Francisco, which none of us want to do. And then we go stand in front of Pelosi's office and cause a problem for a day, right? Even if it's just a day. You can't do this with nobody noticing, would be enough to irritate politicians. And that, unto itself, would be a good start. And I know nobody wants to hear about good starts. Nobody wants to hear about, like, well, we should begin. So everyone just wants the auto win button. But there isn't an auto win button either. Back to, there's no white horse. Trump doesn't have a bastard sword. And we're not about to go out and slay the dragon, you know?
Yeah, I mean, every movement that has ever been strong, if you look at the Jacksonians who were able to basically take over American politics for 60 plus years, this is the seed, ladies and gentlemen. Donald Trump was the seed of populism across the United States of America. He was the big waker-upper. He was the red pill. But there are many, many red pills, many, many white pills, and probably a lot of black pills along the way in terms of moving this movement forward. When you're talking about trying to uproot a class of people that are not just millionaires, billionaires, but sometimes trillionaires, we are talking about a level of power that is not going to go lightly into the darkness. This is a fight for a long battle, and everybody wants the cheap win. Ladies and gentlemen, you know how you get cheap wins? By doing something. You know, when Plebeian talks about actually going out there and causing a ruckus and actually telling police officers that you are not going to move, you know what ends up happening? Things change. When you go out there and go rah-rah on the internet, call your senator and just start screaming at him, nothing ever happens. It's about taking action. I'm all for standing up for our virtue. I'm all for standing up for liberty. I'm all for standing up for conservatism and a better life in the United States of America. But at the end of the day, it's about pragmatism. It is about actually having things change. And that's a big problem that I see with a lot of people on the right. And this is where healthy disagreement comes in. We have to use what works. We have to use what people are willing to vote for. When you start pushing things like, for example, the drug war, I'm a huge proponent against the drug war. I believe that liberty should be free. People should be able to do whatever they want to their body. When you go up to your grandmother and say, hey, you know what, Grandma, we should legalize every single drug. That's right. Heroin, cocaine, meth, the whole 9 yards. No, ladies and gentlemen, you have to start small. Like, hey, you know what? Maybe a blunt on the weekend really isn't such a big deal. It's really not a big thing. It's actually safer than alcohol, et cetera, et cetera. You know what? You're able to actually get people into that state of mind. And that's a big thing I see is people are going for the huge win when at the end of the day, it's just step after step after step. When you are stuck in the hole, you don't get out by just jumping out. It's just small, little incremental, boring, tedious, step after step after step until you're finally out.
Well, this is I guess I really need to go back to talking about some of these concepts. So moving the needle, right? Everybody wants, again, Trump's going to go in and drain the swamp. Well, what is the premise of this? He's going to fire the entirety of the ATF, the FBI, the DEA. And by the way, they're going to let him do this, right? Which, regardless of how many moves he made in this general direction, they were not letting him do this, right? They were fighting him every step of the way. It just somehow, it's all magically going to happen. And that's not ever how this works, right? Nobody just walks in and goes, all right, well, it's all over now, right? I have just determined that we won. And regardless of whatever your goal is, you need to be looking at this as a multi-stage fight because it's going to be a multi-stage fight. I regularly talk about repealing the NFA. And look, if by some miracle there was a Congress and Senate and POTUS that were willing to repeal the NFA, good, do it immediately. However, that's not going to get rid of the giant apparatus that is out there enforcing it. It's not going to get rid of state and local laws. It's not, there is a mountain of things that are enforcing the premises of the NFA, and sometimes much worse than the NFA does. And so those two have to be gone after. So even if you get the big win, you still have to go around and collect all the smaller wins afterwards.
Right. Yeah. And that's the problem is everyone's looking for that big win. I mean, you look at this is the butterfly effect in action. Basically, you do a small thing and that turns into a bigger thing. The snowball effect starts to begin and you actually get people on your side. You create a movement and you actually see political change. But people don't want to just do those small little tedious tasks because they're like, oh my God, this isn't doing enough. Most people aren't doing anything. Most people are just keyboard warriors. Most people aren't willing to go out there and put their voice out there, put their balls on the line and actually speak truth to power. Most people won't even actually go and interact with people at work and say, hey, you know what do you think about this? What if you thought about it this way? If you just trying to influence people in your life. I mean, for example, the whole cootie situation, I'm not sure how many of you have experienced this, but maybe during the holidays, you had somebody that was a little bit more afraid of the cooties than everybody else. And it just so happened to make it kind of a weird dysfunction in terms of what's going on in terms of the whole family dynamic. Everything's being pulled apart. And I think it's about just bringing people together and uniting on common, like things like free speech, things that most people would agree on a basic principle. We have to surround ourselves with people that are willing to actually fight for those particular causes. And that's why when you're pushing out stuff like, hey, you know what, maybe we should go to the nth degree in terms of the Second Amendment. Maybe we should have tanks and we should have, we should be able to have giant battleships like they did back in 1776, etc. You have to be willing to get those small little battles each step of the way because you're not going to see change if you try to go for the big leap every single time. And a big problem with the right in terms of our own contingency is not actively fighting for the culture. We are constantly the ones like, oh gasp, oh gasp, oh gasp, oh my God, every single time the left does something that is completely asinine. We are always on the back foot. We are always constantly surprised about what is happening in terms of the culture rather, and political discourse. We must be the change. And I keep saying it over and over again. You know what? Like, start the culture, be the change, be the ones who actually is out there. Start a business. Well, probably not a great time to start a business right now, but start a business or start a movement or start something, even if it's just a hobby. Maybe you like to play paintball, maybe you like to do airsoft, and you tend to create that culture of like, hey, you know what, weapons aren't that big of a deal. Hey, it's kind of fun. Hey, I'm able to actually learn. I'm able to grow. I'm creating a team, positive masculinity in the world, positive femininity in the world. It's amazing. You're bringing people together under a common cause. And when you're starting with those cultural institutions, for example, if we're talking about the Second Amendment, going out there and teaching people about stuff like self-defense, or even if you're to talk about something with your kids where they're able to participate on a much more massive level like paintball or airsoft or something like that, you're affecting the culture, and people begin to invest in that and say, hey, you know what, if I start banning these type of guns, so they're going to, and this is kind of a stretch, but are they going to start banning like airsoft guns? They're going to start banning paintball guns and stuff like that.
Well,
so you have to,
you say it's a stretch, but I
right,
would direct you to the United Kingdom, where they are doing exactly that, and knives
right,
and everything else. This is how we lose, and I wish I could say that more gently. The culture is irrelevant insofar as the law precludes what you're talking about,
right,
because this is why Breitbart was wrong. And he was. If I outlaw you saying, I don't know, guns are a good thing, or gender does exist. There are two sexes, right? If I make these things unlawful for you to even say, there will never be a culture that supports it. But I don't even have to outlaw you saying them. I just have to outlaw you opposing it in action, right? And you can watch this happen all over the place. And as usual with this speech, I don't really care what you think of whatever actually happened here. The question is whether or not culture changes politics or politics changes culture. And if you go look at gay marriage as a prime example, you find that gay marriage was a thing that couldn't even pass in California until we were all pretty sure that the Supreme Court was going to say it was the law of the land, and then it instantly passed. And the views on gay people and gay marriage since the Supreme Court issued that ruling have changed dramatically for the positive. Now, again, I don't care what you think of, the premise that there is gay marriage or whatever. The reality was the country didn't want it until someone came down by fiat and told them that they wanted it and that they should want it, and then all of a sudden they did. And you can find this with a lot of things like Social Security, the Affordable Care Act, the assault weapons ban, which, by the way, was horrendously unpopular when it passed, and now there are all kinds of people championing it, right? And over and over and over again, you find this same thing where the government outlaws the actual effect of a thing in some way, discriminating against gays for marriage, not giving people insurance, not having insurance, blah, 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 whatever it is. And then the culture changes underneath that, right? And it doesn't matter that the culture hated the thing. Within sometimes just a couple of years, the culture suddenly loves the thing.
I agree with you in some ways, and I disagree with you in other ways. In terms of the culture, I believe that politics and culture, what comes first, is actually irrelevant. I think they can come at the exact same time. A lot of people just want the social proclivity to actually speak it and not feel like they're going to be attacked for their view. I think that's a big part in terms of the liberty movement, is actually be willing to say things that are what are deemed controversial, because every single time you silence yourself and censor yourself, YouTube being a prime example, you are combusting, or not combusting, you are actually pulling in what is deemed as free and fair speech. And it's insanity to me that culture is at a point where basically through edict or through even unpopular opinion, for example, the stimulus bills, a great example, a majority of people, I would say maybe even upwards of 80 plus 90% Americans actually disagreed with this and either wanted more, for various reasons, either wanted more out of it or simply wanted the country to open up. And yet here we are actually having it shoved in our face. So I can agree with you on that in terms of principle. The thing that I find is that in terms of culture is absolutely critical for those thoughts to actually be created in the first place. So without the culture there to actually kind of be laid as a pillar for the law, which is the actual house itself, then the law can't stand, because ultimately law is only enforced if people are willing to actually listen to it.
Well, even then, what you're talking about is the enforcement mechanism, right?
Right.
Because certainly no one who is doing a lot of drugs approves of the drug war. No one who is modding weapons to be fully automatic approves of the NFA, right? And so it's not this unibody idea of who would approve of these things. And the trick in so much of this is to go after some minority of people, right? So regardless of whether or not drugs are legal tomorrow, it will be a minority of people who do drugs.
Right.
And so it was at the time that the drug war started. Regardless of whether or not the Affordable Care Act exists, it will always be a minority of people who didn't have insurance, and the majority of people did and saw their premiums go up, but they mostly got sold a bill of goods as to why that happened that are just complete lies. And it will be the same thing with the stimulus package, right? So, and if you don't believe that, go look into the Great Depression, where we would not have had a Great Depression if not for all the government intervention.
Yep.
The problem is, if you talk to well over 90% of Americans at this point, all the government intervention saved us from how bad the Great Depression could have been, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, turning towards something like a 1776 style education, if you want to talk in terms of the culture and actually people, learning what's actually happening in school, the public service, in terms of the school and the teachers and stuff like that, is in an absolute standstill. We are currently falling in terms of education in the country. The average IQ in terms of the United States is around 90. For those of you who don't know, IQ around the 80 IQ mark, according to Jordan Peterson, makes it very difficult for just that person to fold an envelope correctly. And I'm not going to get into certain topics in terms of IQ. I think you know what I'm talking about. But in terms of IQ, in terms of the United States, it's clear to know that I think a lot of ideas on the right simply don't gain as much footing as they possibly could, because a lot of people, and this is going to sound very elitist, some people simply aren't intelligent enough to understand them, or actually without government assistance, they wouldn't able to be to actually be able to function. A lot of these people actually get jobs through the government because of their disabilities, etc. And I think that's a big problem. If you see what's going on in terms of the left and the right is becoming a masculine party. It is about security, it is about enforcement, it is about upholding the root of law, it's about justice. If you look at the Democrat Party, it's becoming more feminine. It's about being inclusive. It's about being welcoming. It's about being open, to new ideas and stuff like that, where the man of the house is defending the perimeter, the woman is there trying to take care of the children. And I see this kind of exploding. If you were to look at actually current voting statistics, if only men were allowed to vote, only states like, I believe, Oregon, New York, and Washington would actually be voting blue, whereas every other state would be voting red. Whereas if it was the opposite for women, basically every state would be voting for a Democrat. So I don't know. It's really weird in terms of looking at gender in terms of voting patterns. And I think the right needs to find a way to, I'm not saying, lighten our message up a little bit, but if we actually want to win, for the foreseeable future, we have to find a way to actually bring women into the mix. What do you think is the best way of going about that?
So here is the fairly simple reality about bringing women into the mix. If you go tell men you can go carve your way through society and what you create is your own, men everywhere here, I can make my own way, good for me. And women, in the vast generalizations that make me a misogynist, I'm sure, here, wait a minute, I don't really want to do that. And that guy over there said that people will be taken care of, and I want people to be taken care of. And just at a very baser level, this is what you're dealing with. And so there is definitively a gendered-ish question here, insofar as that women want people taken care of more than men, and men want to go be able to take care of themselves and whatever their responsibilities are more than women.
Right. Yep.
That's not going to change, right? And so you either end up with, we must become the left and start defining, redefining gender roles, as it were, or you come to the realization that women are not going to want to have a part of this. And they are going to want to deal more with this let's take care of everybody idea. And whether or not that is ideal is, somebody else can debate that. I don't care. It is how it is. I would also note that married women vote substantially more Republican than unmarried women, and divorced women, for that matter. And the reason for that effectively comes down to they sit there and they watch their men try to carve their ways through life and go, wow, he just gets held back by everything. We would be so much better off if he could just go carve his way through life. So you want to see more women vote Republican? Get married. I don't know what else to tell you. And don't cuck. Because that doesn't help either. If you're not doing your general traditional gender role of things, then she's not going to be interested in it. That's just how it goes, because you're not doing your job. And whether or not anybody likes it, men, you want to solve that problem, go out there, get married, take care of shit. That's how it goes. And look, make no mistake, Reagan fucked us because this is what the problem with no-fault divorce is, right? If woman has option to just marry up whenever she damn well feels like it, she does. Oh my God, Don, how could you say that women are disloyal? Basically the history of women. You don't have to like that, but it is the continuous lesson of these sort of things, right? And so I'm not, getting rid of no-fault divorce doesn't mean there will never be divorce again. It means that if, mama decides that she doesn't like this whole I have responsibilities things when it comes to whatever her job in the world is, she doesn't just get to go, well, I've got titties and that guy likes them, so I'll just go over there. And that's what happens, whether anybody likes it or not, right?
Yeah, I think, and this is a big problem that you see in terms of people that are having trouble in terms of going up the economic ladder. You see Section 8 housing, and what Section 8 housing is actually creating is fatherless homes. And basically, what you're doing is you're creating more leftists. You're creating more people that are willing to have government and suck on the thing of government in order to actually have their life essentially, move forward, so to speak, at least in terms of their mind. So, and this is why I talk about small victories in terms of the right. Most people on the right would say, oh my god, you know what, let's just get rid of Section 8 housing altogether, right? Trying to propose that is radical in nature in terms of the everyday average person who actually walks by these ghettos and actually sees the way that these people are living. But what you can actually do is promote more things like Section 3 housing, which actually requires the man to be in the home in order for them to have the incentivize of getting government assistance.
Hold on a second. I gotta deal with a thing that Chad is doing, because I knew this was coming the moment I stopped talking. Get married, boys. Just do it. Just not in California. Divorce lawyers are awful, and laws are levied against men. So, when I say if you want to solve the problem of women voting Democrat, get married, that is the solution to women voting Democrat. For the 9 billion of you who are going to come at me and say, Don, getting married screws you in the 21st century, you are correct. If you want to solve the problem of women voting Democrat, get married, you're going to get screwed. I didn't say there was no cost. You're right. There is a problem. That's the solution. That's how it works, right? And I get it. It's dangerous. It's more than a little dangerous. You very well may end up getting swatted because your wife, I don't know, tripped and scraped her knee, and then her friend said that you, I don't know, beat the hell out of her. Yeah, I got it. I understand. I get it. So the cops may get called to a domestic violence situation where you literally have a knife in your ribs and you go to jail. I got it. You asked me how to solve one problem, not all of them. I don't have a magic wand. Sorry, chat.
And this is, you know what? I think people on the right, just in general, tend to lean more towards masculine virtue. You should be able to choose, and I don't mean to make this like a relationship advice podcast, but you should be able to choose who your partner is. Most people are willing to just settle for what's in front of them. Do simple things like go to the gym, surround yourself with people that you actually want to be around instead of maybe meeting your wife at the next, the bar down the street. Maybe you actually go and join. And I know, guys, you're going to have to put your pride on the line on this one. Maybe join a salsa dancing club or something like that, where you can surround yourself with some high quality women who aren't going to backstab you. Now, I'm not saying this is a 100% guarantee, but maybe if you move up in terms of the paradigm, in terms of the women you're surrounding yourself with, you're going to find yourself in a better spot. And it's ironic because this internet age is actually, it's tearing us apart. It really is. Not only are the lockdowns, but if you look at just the internet in general, we're kind of living in our own virtual bubbles, our own virtual lives. And in terms of communicating with the opposite sex, if you will, has been on a steady decline. Birth rates on a decline. Happiness in terms of women and men are on a decline. It's truly tragic. And for those of you actually, ironic, I actually did a YouTube channel before this, talking about this type of topic. And, just get yourself in line first, make yourself a better man, and just be willing to take rejection as it is. It's the same thing in politics. You have to be willing to be rejected over and over and over and over and over again. At the end of the day, you only need one win.
As often as not, yeah. At least depending on what we're talking about. Right? So politics, get ready to get the win, then get rejected again a few hundred more times.
Amen.
But, this is... The right gets really black-pilled very quickly. If anything goes wrong, and this is part of why people get upset when you say something is going wrong, right? Look, X, Y, and Z thing was not good, and it happened. Oh my God, you're just black-pilled. This happens to me all the time. Well, look, bad things happen. That doesn't mean you're black-pilled,
Right.
It's funny enough, the guy that runs the channel Black Pilled gave this speech the other day. All right? Devin Stack was talking about, look, just because you accept all of these things doesn't mean you're depressed and demotivated. It means you understand what is happening and then can move forward. And I went, well, that's really not very black pilled of you, but it's the same thing over and over again where, there will be setbacks. Live with it,
Yep.
It's funny that I keep having to give that kind of speech to the same people who want to tell it to the left every day. Sorry, chat, but that's how this goes. And look, we need to swallow our own lesson here.
Yeah, I mean, we don't want to be hypocrites. I mean, it's really sad. I mean, one great example that comes to mind off the top of my head in terms of the hypocrisy that we've been dealing with in terms of the left has been this. I don't know if you've seen the new cooties card that they're thinking of introducing. Perhaps a barcode or something like that. So let me see if I get this straight. So you're telling me that I have to go through this entire process. I get myself a nice little cooties card, and then I'm able to fly. I'm able to go to concerts and this, that, and the other. But I can't, I don't need a card in order to actually go out and vote.
Yes. Well, look here, Uden. If we wanted you to vote, we'd tell you to vote. But if we want you to leave the house, then we will tag you accordingly. I don't. Look, I know. Oh my God, how dare you make a joke? Get over it. But this is the, understand that there are no principles for these people, right? Or at least none that make any sense to normal human beings. Because when you look at the hypocrisy of the left, I see people do this all the time, right? Is they go, well, if the left, in this instance, right, believed that it would be important to ID people for X, Y, and Z reason, then according to them, voting is our most valuable civil right. Therefore, if it's that important, then we would need an ID. Well, understand that the objective is to maintain power because a lot of these people are what amounts to the fallout of communism. And they're still basically just communists. They have rebranded a little bit. They dropped the name communism. They have nicer words like the Great Reset as opposed to the Revolution. I mean, it's the same shtick that it's been for a century, and whatever gets there is what they care about. And so, insofar as that's true, they're not hypocrites. They, and this is the thing, is that stop trying to understand these people through the view of your own life, because they don't have it. They don't even care about it. It doesn't exist to them. And by the way, you're effectively not human if you have that view. Much like counter-revolutionaries were effectively not human for the communists.
Yeah, it's ironic because if you're ever to press them on their utopian vision, speaking to communism, they always assume that they're going to be this, massive general, or they're going to be head of some council, or they're going to be the ones who's leading in terms of this massive revolutionary act. No, right. You're going to be tilling the fields. Grab your hose, grab your picks. You're going to be out there tilling the fields, ladies and gentlemen. You're not going to be in there doing the orders, because all of the actual ones who rebelled and created the system are going to be lined up against the wall. And I think what happens next.
Well, yeah, and this is, make no mistake, they'll have a little bit of time, right? Because they'll come for people like me first. It's this thing where, and there's another group of these people who don't think they'll be in control, but they think that they will have all of the luxuries of modern Western life, right, while they write slam poetry that zero people listen to. And I wish I was making that up. There is a whole subsection of communist Twitter that literally thinks this. Like, oh, after the revolution, man, I'm gonna be a slam poet at the local bar. No, you aren't. For it turns out that feeding people is difficult, and all of this BS where you people just say, well, why don't we just feed people, is wrong, and every communist country in the world ever has proved it.
Yeah, I mean, what do you think of what's going on? I don't know if you've heard of basically truckers working together, talking about actively stopping groceries and stuff like that coming into large cities. Do you think there's any actual merit to that, or do you think it's just rhetoric?
No, I do not. I do not think they will be doing it. Sorry, truckers, I don't believe you. And I will maintain that policy quite literally until New York City starves. So if you skip a day, don't come to me and go, well, we didn't deliver on Tuesday, because no one cares. The local distribution centers still have things. They're just going to order all the stuff for delivery on Wednesday as opposed to Tuesday, and then you're going to deliver it, right? So, if you want to start making people pay attention to you, strike for 5 days. By the end of 48 hours, they will be coming to you going like, we don't have that much longer. When are you guys delivering stuff? And that, I don't think that's going to happen, right? But if you shut down every truck on a Monday and say, next delivery will be next Monday, see you then someone will pay attention. But we want to do this kind of symbolic crap where, well, no one's going to deliver anything on Monday. And all the distribution guys go, all right, cool, everybody, we're going to need overtime tomorrow, but whatever. See you later. Everybody go home. Unpaid day of vacation. Enjoy. 3-day weekend. See ya. And nobody cares about this.
Yeah, and this is a big problem with the right, is that despite all the people in terms of the left having major institutions of power, we don't actually exercise our own power. The farmers, the truckers, the blue collar workers actually going out there and saying, you know what? We actually think we're pretty important. You know what? In fact, you wouldn't be eating right now with us. And for some reason, there just doesn't seem to be the political willpower to do this type of stuff. And I think the reason why is because most people actually know somebody on the left who's usually a loved one. And they're like, you know what? These people, they don't care. They're living their own lives, this, that, and the other. And most of these people, they're not even super hardcore. We're looking at the fringes and these contingencies that are actually going into the cities and burning and looting and murdering and stuff like that. But if you just look at the average everyday Democrat, they're just a Kool-Aid drinking MSNBC latte person. They're not these crazy anarchist types or communist types. They're just normal everyday people that happen to not be taking the red pill. And Michael Malice actually talks about this quite a bit. And he's actually come to the point where he believes it's simply clandestine, that these blue pill people are simply unable to ever wake up, no matter how much information and truth you give to them. Do you prescribe to that type of thinking?
No. And this goes right on back to the Peterson thing from earlier, right? So for everybody who thinks that, pick your number, it's somewhere between 20 and 75% of society can literally never get over this, well, start shooting people, right? Just do it now. Just cut to the chase, start shooting people. Because that's all you're saying. You're just going the really, 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 really long way around it, right? And this is the thing is, people ask me, well, Don, if that's true, then how do you get to them? Well, it needs to be personal to them. And every single time that it is, you see somebody who yesterday you would have counted among they can't understand, suddenly become based black man or whatever it is, and you get Officer Tatum, you get Candace Owens, you get everyone that everybody calls a grifter, who regardless is still out there doing things that are beneficial. And therein is the problem, is that people do make this move. They have for all of time, right? And even if there is some infinitely small subsection who we otherwise don't have to deal with because they don't matter, then the correct answer is they don't matter, and this is not a subject we're talking about.
Right. Yeah, I think it's tough being in, especially on the right. I mean, given the amount of censorship and not being able to speak, and it's so crazy to me that the way that people on the right are labeled, whether it's like white supremacist or geez, I can't even say certain words, but you understand. Basically, the concept is that you're not able to speak because you're so evil. Since when has freedom become so evil? Like, I just think that this idea that having the state take care of us, when they've made it very, very clear through their spending policies that they are simply inept at governance. We are looking at an over 135% inflation at this point, and yet nobody seems to care. I mean, even Donald Trump has been a spending machine. And this is probably my biggest pushback against him. He's been spending out of control. And this was even before COVID was even, sorry, cooties, cooties was even a thing. So I just, in terms of a way forward, I really hope that January 6th is this massive bombshell. If you look at a lot of people that are talking right now online, I just really hope that Sidney Powell and the Lynn Woods of the world, and if you're talking about just Twitter users in general, major patriot who are saying that there's this plan and that there's, this super secret thing that we don't understand, and that Trump has this in the bag, and that maybe he is actually the one who's going to go through the Crusades with that bastard sword, and you don't know this. I really hope this is the truth. But you know what? At the end of the day, I'm going to sign in terms of realism. Even the dramatic stories that a lot of people talk about. If you ever watch a movie, it says it's dramatized so that you enjoy it at a much more excited rate. But again, these super secret plans, to me, I'm just not seeing it, and I really, really hope he proves me wrong.
That seems like a perfectly good place to call this. Because we are, believe it or not, right about an hour and a half. So, with that, and being as you just ended that line, anything else that you want to say before you get out of here?
I just want to say, hey, thank you for your time. You are a true patriot. Thank you for your service. Amazing veteran. I will still always hate the Marine Corps a little bit, a little jealous, but we were talking about this earlier. And thank you for your time. My name's Lucius Coal. You can check me out on YouTube, Parler, Twitter, Facebook, basically the whole 9 yards, Odyssey, and BitChute. So if you love liberty, and make sure to stop by.
Well, hey, thank you for coming down. Don't worry about hating the Marine Corps. Lots of people do just because they weren't Marines.
Fair.
That said, thank you all for watching. Indeed, you can find all of Lucius's social media down below, and by all of it, I mean there was a big, long list that said you don't have to include all of this. It's all down there. So whatever you're on, whatever social media you're trying to avoid, given the list that's down there, there's probably something you're on. So with that, thank you all for watching, and remember, fight the progressives wherever you find them, and fight them like your life depends on it, because it does.